The question, what are the four players that the Indiana Fever should core to make sure that no team can touch them heading into the expansion draft? Remember, you just lose these players straight up. You don't get anything back for the players. They're gone. We didn't get anything for Temi, did we? No, exactly.
The Indiana Fever just detonated a roster bomb that has fans losing their minds, and the entire WNBA is watching in disbelief. 4 players gone overnight, the locker room in chaos, and Caitlyn Clark caught in the middle of a storm that could change everything. This isn't just a roster adjustment. This is a meltdown disguised as strategy, a desperate gamble from a front office running out of time. The question now isn't who's staying, it's who's next to walk out that door before the expansion draft hits. Because if Indiana doesn't lock down their core right now, they could lose the very foundation they spent the last season building. And no one, not even Clark, might be able to save it.
Good to be back in Las Vegas.
It feels great to be back, but I'm going to pivot to something else. Sally, is that cool?
Yes.
All right. On behalf of my teammates and every member of our union, I want to be clear. We remain committed to negotiating the next CBA with the league and the teams in good faith and privately. We know that our league is growing, and we believe that it's imperative that our CBA reflects the growth that we've experienced in the league, and that players should be seeing part of those earnings. And so I am excited to be back here, but unfortunately there are more pressing things going on with our league.
Before we even name a single player, you lock in the truth that decides Indiana's entire offseason. Championships aren't built by headlines. They're built by protecting a nucleus, and every day you wait, the market eats your roster alive. So here's the blueprint we use to decide the 4 you absolutely cannot lose. First, availability, because the best ability is showing up for 82 practices, and every fourth quarter second, two-way impact. You must guard at the point of attack and still punish a switch. Or you're unplayable in May, third synergy with Caitlyn Clark and Aaliyah Boston, because if your game doesn't amplify their gravity, you're a luxury, not a necessity. Fourth, age and durability, because the core has to peak with Clark's timeline, not expire before it fifth cap efficiency, because a core that breaks. Your budget isn't a core, it's a trap. And 6, playoff proofing, because we've seen what happens when the lights get hot and spacing disappears. So our protected 4 must survive pressure coverages and late game switches without blinking. That's the filter. No sentiment, no nostalgia, no panic moves. If you don't clear these bars, your depth. If you crush them, your core. And in 60 seconds, we're going to stack the Fever roster through that lens and reveal exactly who earns those 4 golden locks and why.
Averaged 20.2 points per game last season, 3.2 assists for somebody who never passes the ball, from what I'm told. She averaged over 3 assists last year. She never passes the ball. You'd think she'd average 1.5, 1.2. 3.2 assists for Kelsey Money Mitch, and shot nearly 40% from 3, 39% from the 3-point line for Kelsey Mitchell last year. When her and Caitlyn Clark are in the lineup together, lethal, deadly, the best backcourt in the league.
When you strip Indiana down to its heartbeat, 4 names keep this team alive. Caitlyn Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Lexi Hull. Clark is the spark the one defenses can't ignore. Boston is the anchor, a rising MVP threat who dominates the paint. Mitchell brings firepower and leadership, while Hull adds defense, hustle, and spacing. Lose one and the whole rhythm collapses. That's why locking these 4 before the expansion draft isn't optional, it's survival, because without this core, the Fever go right back to square one, and all that momentum around Clark disappears overnight.
Don't believe it'll happen. There is a possibility that Kelsey Mitchell may take her talents elsewhere, and we need to be fully prepped and ready to go to continue to build this roster out around Caitlyn Clark.
Now, here's where things start getting messy, because losing 4 veterans doesn't just hurt depth, it shatters rhythm. Those players were the bridge between young stars and the locker room. Heartbeat Odyssey, Sims Brianne January, Sydney Colson, and Bree Hall weren't superstars, but they were stabilizers. They kept the team focused when Clark went down. And now, with them gone, Indiana looks exposed. The chemistry they built last season doesn't automatically return next year, and the pressure on Clark in Boston just doubled. Fans can feel it. They waited years for this team to matter again, and now it feels like another reset button got hit. If management doesn't move fast to fill that void, the Fever could lose not only games, but the trust of a fan base that finally came back to life. With those veterans gone, the Fever aren't just losing production, they're losing guidance. The voices that held that locker room together are suddenly silent, and that's a dangerous place for a young roster. Caitlyn Clark may be the face of the franchise, but she's not the captain yet. And without players like Sims or January to balance the emotions and keep the energy steady, Indiana risks falling into chaos. Leadership doesn't show up on box scores, but it wins games in the fourth quarter, and right now, no one knows who will take that role. Next, the team feels like it's running on star power instead of structure. And if the front office doesn't bring in veteran stability, soon, this young core could burn out before it ever reaches its full potential. Every finger now points at the front office because fans aren't buying the strategic rebuild excuse anymore. They see a pattern of hesitation and half measures. Indiana talks about building around Caitlyn Clark, but their actions scream uncertainty. They had cap space, veteran options, and trade leverage, yet somehow ended up with empty seats and unanswered questions. When you let 4 core contributors walk without replacements, it's not rebuilding, it's mismanaging, and that's why social media is exploding. Fans are calling it self-sabotage, wondering if the Fever actually learned anything from last year's chaos. The truth is, the league is watching too because no one wants to see the Caitlyn Clark era wasted by poor planning. If the Fever don't act fast and make bold moves this offseason, they risk losing credibility and momentum faster than they built it. All of this chaos eventually lands on one person, Caitlyn Clark. Because whether the front office admits it or not, the success or failure of this franchise now lives on her shoulders. She's the reason the Fever sell out arenas, she's the reason sponsors line up, and she's the reason national media even care about Indiana basketball. But stardom comes with a heavy cost when the roster weakens. Every flaw gets magnified. When the chemistry cracks, the blame finds her, and that's not fair. Clark can carry a team, she's proven that, but she can't fix an unstable system by herself. The organization has to surround her with shooters, defenders, and leaders, or she'll spend another year fighting uphill battles and taking unnecessary hits the window. To protect her legacy is open right now, and if the Fever waste it, they risk losing the brightest light the WNBA has seen in a generation. This isn't just about the Fever anymore. The whole WNBA is watching because how Indiana handles this situation sets the tone for every team trying to balance stardom and structure. The league finally has a global spotlight, thanks to Caitlyn Clark, and the last thing anyone wants is for that momentum to crash because of front office mistakes. Rival teams like the Aces, the Liberty, and the Wings are already circling. They know chaos creates opportunity, and if Indiana keeps hesitating, those franchises will scoop up every valuable free agent left on the board. The WNBA thrives when its stars are supported, not stranded, and that's why league executives, agents, and even broadcasters are quietly asking the same question. What message does it send if the Fever can't protect the biggest draw in women's basketball? It's no longer just a team problem, it's a league reputation problem, and Indiana can't afford to be the cautionary tale. Time is ticking for the Indiana Fever, and the margin for error is gone. This offseason isn't just about contracts, it's about identity. Are they going to stand behind their superstar and build a dynasty, or stumble into another rebuild disguised as progress? The expansion draft looms, the CBA freeze still clouds, every front office move, and rival teams are circling like sharks, ready to steal whatever talent. Indiana hesitates on the Fever, can't afford another season of excuses or empty promises. This is the moment where words have to turn into action, where protecting Caitlyn Clark and Aaliyah Boston becomes more than a press release if they get it right. They set the foundation for the next decade. If they get it wrong, the entire Caitlyn Clark era could become one of the biggest what-if stories in WNBA history. At the end of the day, this entire storm comes down to one decision. Will the Indiana Fever protect the empire they've started building, or let it collapse under indecision? Caitlyn Clark gave this franchise life again. She brought national attention, record crowds, and a new standard of excellence. But without commitment from the top, that spark won't last. The front office has the money, the market, and the talent pool to rebuild smarter than ever. Yet every second they hesitate, that window closes. This offseason isn't just about signings. It's about proving to every fan and every player that Indiana can handle greatness. Because if they fail, the league moves on, the spotlight fades, and the story shifts from rise to ruin. But if they act now and protect their core with bold, confident moves, the Fever can transform this chaos into the foundation of something legendary. This is the final countdown, not for survival, but for legacy. And the clock has already started.